The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Oh, that leader might just be Jayden Daniels. Now, of course, in that introductory bite from months and months ago, Adam Peters was the target of Josh Harris's comment. But Jayden Daniels is really starting to stand out as a guy who might be ready to take over QB1, not just by training camp, not just by week 1, but like by the end of the spring. He looked really, really sharp today. And while there is still so much more to learn about quarterbacking for him at the NFL level, because he's been on the job for less than a month. The draft was April 25th. It's May 22nd. He has been a Commander less than a month. But he is certainly executing this offense, in my opinion. The test that is in front of him, he is grading higher than Marcus Mariota already. The speed with which he gets through his progressions, the accuracy, some of the reads where he's like looking guys off and creating space and giving guys a chance. I mean, even this little thing from today, they're in 2 minutes. He gets through his progressions. He realizes the play is dead and he just throws the ball out of bounds. Like he looks downfield and throws it intentionally over a receiver's head downfield. No, he's still in the pocket, but no intentional grounding, no wasted time. It's just, let me get the ball out, let me live to see the next play, and let me make sure the clock stops. That's big-time stuff from a processing and kind of a game management standpoint. You know, that term game manager, if that's all you are, then maybe you're going to be winning just kind of with you, not because of you. Jayden Daniels has that trait, but he's also got a bunch of win because of traits as well. And the praise is pretty high from people who have been around this league a long time. His head coach, who you hear from in a minute, and the guy who's been tasked in backing him up, Marcus Mariota, talking about the rookie who he's technically in a fight with for the top job of quarterbacking the Commanders.
Yeah, he looks good. I think he really moves well, throws the ball well. And, for a young guy that's coming in, seems to really, command the offense. And I think that's important. I think that's very important in the quarterback position to be able to, stand in front of these guys, especially older players, and kind of nail it and say, I got this. I got it figured out. So I think he's done a great job of that. And we just got to continue to help him grow and develop. And, I think at the end of the day, when we're all competing in that room, it makes every one of us better.
No doubt. And it's not just when you're on the practice field. It's how you carry yourself behind the scenes. And that's where Dan Quinn focused in when talking about the number 2 overall pick.
As we're getting started, it's a big passing camp. So for the quarterbacks, they're getting some really good looks. There's a number of coverages now that have gone in, from the first day of where it was maybe just 3 deep and man-to-man. So to see that type of progress from he and from the other quarterbacks, I think that's good. In weeks ahead, we'll add team things to it and blitzes and, a pocket and that kind of stuff. But I think what jumps not only off the tape here, what you guys don't see in the meeting room is just the competitive nature and the learning and the command that he has already. And so that's something that speaks to his work ethic.
No doubt about it. There's no questions about the work ethic. John Allen actually said today as well that he was always one of the first guys in the building. Not anymore. I mean, he still is one of the first guys, but when he shows up for work, Jayden Daniels is already there, which certainly matches what he did at LSU in that final season and how he really became a professional and ultimately worthy of that number 2 pick by the end of his Heisman-winning senior season. Number 2, Anthony. Number 2, please.
Number 2.
Number 2 is a hypothesis that I wanted to put to the test today, and it really didn't take much of a test. I just asked Dan Quinn directly about the depth chart, because last week, Emanuel Forbes, the practice that we saw, OTA, I think it was number 1, he was with the second team, and it was like, whoa, what does that mean? Does it mean anything this time of year? And especially with how they structured practice, in my mind, I was like, I'm pretty sure this means nothing. They're just mixing and matching, and for all we knew, we were there Tuesday last week. On Wednesday, he was working with the ones, and sure enough, to skip ahead, today he was working with the ones. He was the first corner out there, along with Benjamin St. Juste, instead of Michael Davis, who was the number 2. So with the way they structure practice and everyone getting pretty equal reps, I was pretty sure Dan Quinn would answer my question like this. But the question was, at this point in the calendar, does the depth chart matter? Or are you looking at other things and eventually you'll start the evaluation process down the line?
If you look, big picture wise, there's certain parts of our identity that we'll be able to hit now. The speed, the execution of finishing plays downfield, the defense, the way they break, the way they run to the ball, like that's an identity part we're putting together, and I'm seeing, signs of that moving forward. The things that we don't get to see right now are the physical parts of it, like that's not what this time is for. So what areas and knowing what to compete at that time. So in this time, it's competing, man, can I learn these details and can I really go execute really quickly, communication. So not as much of the evaluation it is the learning to go, but I do want to see that speed and see the guys communicate and the chemistry that goes. But as far as the depth chart is, not really right now. That's not part of it. We want to get as many guys, as much reps as we can, and then as we get into camp, then we'll be able to start building that as we go, which would include the preseason games.
And that's what they've done with the structure, again, of practice to make sure everyone gets the same amount of reps in pretty much every drill. Now, that said, going back to Daniels a little bit, there were some drills today where I feel like Daniels got a few more reps once they finally got out of these kind of equal drills, some of the air raid inspired passing drills where all 4 quarterbacks are throwing, as well as one of the coaches to get 5 receivers working at a time, all 4 quarterbacks working at a time. It's a really efficient way to practice. But when you get out there, only one quarterback can be out there during a team drill. They had some of that today. And even though Marcus Mariota went first, Jayden Daniels got more. So the depth chart, it doesn't matter. It's May. And even if it does matter to say like, okay, well, right now this player's here, that can all change in 2 practices once you add pads and contact and all that kind of stuff in August. With that said, number 3. Emanuel Forbes was with the ones today. And he looks similar to last year. And I'm not going to freak out about that by any stretch. I don't freak out about pretty much anything as related to football in May, because why would you? There's so much time for him to continue to learn, and people learn at different speeds, and the breakthrough could come where he masters what it is that they want from him, and he all of a sudden is great. But there's a play today, we talked about it with JP Finley an hour ago, where Forbes is trailing De'Ami Brown in a red zone situation. Play breaks down, scramble. Brown break towards the back corner of the end zone. And Emmanuel's in pretty good position chasing him, but there's just not an awareness of where Marcus Mariota is, where he is looking, and that the ball is coming in his direction. Great touchdown catch by De'Ami. That probably could have been a pick, if not at least a PBU, that never touches De'Ami's hands by Forbes. And so I do wonder, as he is being a part of the kick return rotation and the punt return rotation, if they are trying to plan for him not being a starter, but with it, being a first-round pick in the second year, he's going to be on the roster. But it's not like he's going to be a gunner on special teams. Like, part of the problem is he doesn't tackle very well and is not necessarily a super physical player that's wanting to stick his nose in there and capable of sticking his nose in the places you need to stick your nose to be a special teams demon, just a super physical type of player. And so if he's got return value, that would seem very helpful to make use of him not being essentially a dead roster spot who's not starting and not playing teams on game day. I also do think there's a bigger picture here where Dan Quinn and his coaching staff is trying to learn this roster and see how they maximize everybody. So Quinn was asked before practice today about Forbes being a part of that punt return rotation.
Right off the bat, we know there's more return opportunities, and so Emmanuel's got ridiculous return skills as a defensive player of returning. So we wanted to add that part of it. Although he didn't do it at Mississippi State, that doesn't mean he doesn't have the traits necessary. So we got a big, deep crew now that we're working people both in punt return and in kick return. And so just like everything, we're trying to, find out what unique things a player has and how to feature them. That not only will be during this time of year. Can he be a punt returner? Can a safety come down to play dime? Can a tight end split out wide? Those are things that it takes time through training camp. One player may be able to, another player may not. And so it does take a little bit of exploring, but that's like our job as coaches to find any unique traits that the players have, and then how would we feature those unique traits, and trying to find the things that people can do versus the things that they can't do.
I love that so much from Quinn. And there's kind of a micro discussion about Forbes and a macro discussion about Quinn here. The micro discussion about Forbes is distilled to the shrug emoji. I don't know what to make of Emanuel Forbes. I need a lot more information, and we will get more information as he continues to play throughout the rest of the spring and into the summer. But I do think, just seeing him again today, and just, he's so damn skinny. And he's not, he is the skinniest player I've ever seen in the NFL. And it's really hard to be an exception to, that dramatic of an exception to the type of body you need to play in this league. And maybe he's it. Maybe. But the fact that he hasn't come back noticeably bigger, or hasn't changed whatever, either this is just who he is and they're fine with it, or they probably wish he had come back with a little bit bigger and done a little more work in the weight room, whatever. And it just feels like that should have happened between year 1 and year 2. The macro discussion about Quinn is that his willingness to explore everything and be thorough is fantastic. Not leaving stones unturned, making sure, testing things out. That's what this time of year is for. It's about mastering the basics and exploring what possibilities exist. Now, if you're still exploring possibilities in late August, we got issues. You should know what people do by then. But that's because you figured it out now. I love that. Great leadership from DQ and the organization, but also there's so many great leaders in the locker room, which wound up kind of being the topic of the day today.
Number 4.
One of those leaders, if not the leader now, is Bobby Wagner, who was a bit of a surprise when he came to Washington, not only because he's the type of player that has typically not come to Washington for, 20 plus years, but because they signed Frankie Louvu, and we thought he was going to be the middle linebacker, and all of a sudden, a couple of days later, wait, what? The Commanders signed Bobby Wagner? So what were those conversations like between Wagner, Dan Quinn, and Adam Peters that convinced him, Wagner, that Washington was the right place for him?
Me and DQ always we always kept in touch. We always had an open relationship. I don't think we talked about trying to build things, in Seattle, because I think, what we built in Seattle was something special, and it just needs to be left alone. You know what I mean? So obviously there's things that we can take, from that culture. There's things that we can, bring here that can, I think, benefit. But it's really about creating your own space, your own energy, and seeing what we can do with it.
I think that's interesting because Bobby Wagner was a young player. Dan Quinn was, relatively speaking, a young coach in Seattle. The relationship was certainly different. Quinn, was experienced, but I believe that was his first DC job, certainly in the NFL level. So there's some learning on the job there. Wagner's a young player, and now they come to this at very different stages of their lives and careers. Wagner on the way down, although still tremendously effective, but not the young hyper athlete that he was when he was younger, and obviously has a dozen years more of experience. Meanwhile, Quinn, been a head coach before, now considered when he's in the coordinator position, one of the absolute best D coordinators in the league, without question, although I guess with the results they had in Seattle, that was not really in doubt for very long. But the established nature of who he is, and still talking about, hey, we have to create a space where you can create something unique and not trying to recreate something that was in Seattle or what Quinn had in Atlanta or Dallas or what Wagner has experienced in his years beyond Quinn in Seattle or what he had in LA with Sean McVay, et cetera, on down the list. So I think that openness is great, and I think it probably will help contribute to finding what the right mix is here. I'd be so curious to hear more from John Allen and Terry McLaurin and some of the established guys here about how Wagner's approached that, because he is a new voice in the room, and there's so many new faces that, so many new guys that aren't familiar with Allen and McLaurin anyway, but they're familiar and recognize them as oh, those are the main guys in burgundy and gold. To look up and be oh, Bobby Wagner, And to be able to come in and just kind of take on that leadership role can be challenging, and it's something you have to navigate. But Wagner's so respected that I have no doubt that's been something that he, Zach Ertz, Austin Eckler have taken on. And I also loved a quote from Quinn today when he was asked about the leadership, and he's like, look, we definitely brought these guys in because of who they are, but they're ball players first, and they got to focus on what they're doing, and they're doing a great job of managing that so far. Softman Show, we're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, and we are 2/3 of the way through our Pick 6 at 6, where we take the 6 biggest Commander storylines and lay them all out for you. And on the day of our second open practice for the media out in Ashburn, my 5th observation / takeaway was just how intentional the offensive coaches are. And I say offensive coaches not to say that the defenses aren't. It's just where we stand on the field, or where I was standing today, I could see the offensive coaches. I have no doubt the same exact thing is happening with Joe Witt Jr. and his staff on the other field. It's just a football field away. But watching Cliff Kingsbury coach and watching the intentionality and the purpose, like that guy walks like he's got somewhere to be. And there is a sense of urgency, but also confidence that I think really establishes a great environment to work in. And I think you see the results. I mean, obviously with Ron, first it was Scott running the offensive stuff, and there's no urgency to anything with Scott Turner here. You go back to Jay, like he would get in modes where I would see that. Sean was always like that, which I think is interesting and noteworthy. When Sean McVay was the offensive coordinator, there was a crispness to things and attention to detail to things that I think is really high level. And actually, even on that front, I'll say this real quick, up to the DQ level of things, there's a moment today where they're running 2-minute, and Bryson Tremaine does not get lined up as quickly as DQ and Cliff and everybody wants. And so after the drill, Tremaine's on the sideline, and it should be mentioned that Tremaine's had a tremendous spring so far. He's having a really good time, so sorry that his name is coming up for Bryson in this particular moment, but I thought it was a great moment for Quinn, and he just is like, hey, dude, like, you got to get on the line. Like, you got to get lined up. And for the head coach to be locked in on that type of details, a play style, an intentionality type of thing, sets a tone. And Cliff, just his general urgency to be like, all right, we did that. That was good. Now we're here. Okay, we did that. That was good. Now we're here. It's a no BS type of thing, but in a very different way than Bieniemy, who just seemed to be yelling at people a lot. And there was an intensity and an intentionality, but I don't want to say it lacked confidence, but it wasn't a confident culture. I think Eric was really confident. I don't think the players were. And so I think watching Cliff coach in that way is very cool. I think it's effective. And that's great. But there's also so many other great coaches. I think Anthony Lynn carries himself in a very similar type of way. And in fact, Marcus Mariota actually talked about another guy who's almost a forgotten guy on this staff, and that is former Eagles quarterback coach and probably future offensive coordinator in the league, Brian Johnson.
He's awesome. I can't say enough good words and good things about him. He is also part of the reason why I came. I think from a football mind standpoint, he's one of the better ones that I've been around, and I just think the person itself, he's high integrity guy, and I just try to surround myself with that kind of people. As you get older in this league, you've been around, you're just trying to surround yourself with good people, and I really think that's what they're building here.
I should say Johnson, not only former Eagles quarterback coach, but was the offensive coordinator last year as well, where Mariota was the backup. And again, I go back to not just the coaches having confidence, but instilling that in the players, and thus a confident environment. That's how you're going to nurture people into growth, which, by the way, with a very young team that's hoping to grow over the next couple of years, that's really important. So is having fun at work, which brings us to
number 6.
Ashburn has not been fun the last couple of years. The Commanders has not been a good place to be. Obviously, there's all the ownership stuff that's been happening for roughly 4 years. There's been stuff that was beyond Ron Rivera's control, including his own cancer. Like, there's just a heaviness in all of that. And not to mention, they were really bad at football the last bunch of years. Well, things are different now. And John Allen, for one, has certainly noticed. This is a good end to our Pick 6 at 6.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's pretty known that we've had, our struggles in the past, but I mean, it has been really good this year. So, I'm not going to talk about how great it is because at the end of the day, we still got a lot to prove, but I have a smile on my face coming to work every day.
And that's great. As I've said often, and I will continue to say, all you can do is pass the test that's in front of you. You can't take the fall test in the spring. And whether that's with Jayden Daniels or just be in a place that people enjoy showing up and want to do good work in, that is the test right now. And whether it's, again, Jayden and his teammates, especially his rookie teammates, learning, they're passing those tests. They're doing really well. And certainly DQ and AP and Cliff and Joey Jr. and Daryl Tapp and everybody on that staff is making this a place that players want to be. And that means they're going to work harder for each other. And hopefully that does lead to the work getting done that leads to wins in the fall. That's our pick 6 at 6. Another one coming at you next week when the Commanders have their next OTA session. And then, of course, we got the mandatory minicamp coming up in a couple of weeks as well.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.